Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and I'm excited to announce two new tutorials based on the Allemande and Gigue from French Suite No. 5 in G major by Johann Sebastian Bach. These will be taught by Dr. Ben Laude, a friend and fellow content creator. Most of you will know him from Tonebase. And just so I do him justice, I wanted to read a short bio outlining all of his accomplishments before we dive into today's tutorial, which will cover the Allemande. So this is part one of two tutorials that he will be presenting on this channel this week and then next week with the Gigue. Ben Laude is a concert pianist, music educator, and video producer whose playing has been described by the New York Times as superb in pace, tone, and eloquence. For 2 decades, Laude has taught piano, music theory, and aural skills through his private studio, graduate fellowships at Juilliard, faculty positions held at Bard College Conservatory, and New York's Suzuki School for Strings. He is currently associate faculty at Utah State University, where he has taught piano, literature, aural skills, and applied piano. Serving as the head of the Tonebase piano platform for 4 years, Ben created hundreds of video lessons and interviews with dozens of world-class pianists, including the likes of Yujia Wang, Garrick Olson, and Marc-Andre Hamelin, and received a YouTube Silver Creator Award for the Tonebase Piano YouTube channel. As a concert artist, Laude has given recitals across 3 continents and performed in Alice Tully Hall and Carnegie's Weill Recital Hall. Laude holds degrees in piano performance from Rice University and the Juilliard School. His major teachers and mentors include Jerome Lowenthal, Matti Ricalio, David Dubal, Robert Rue, and Eric Hicks. Ben continues to create online audio and video content about classical piano on his YouTube channel, and I will link that in the description below this video. He is currently partnering with the Chopin Foundation of the United States to create and host the Chopin Podcast, a 12-part series starring Garrick Olson that delves deep into the music of Chopin. I will also link that if you'd like to listen to that. I'll link that in the description below. Without further ado, welcome to Ben Laude.
Welcome to Pro Practice. My name is Ben Laude. I'm a concert pianist and content creator. I've got my doctorate from Juilliard, and I've spent decades in music education at this point. And I'm so excited to be sharing with you today my thoughts and feelings and hopefully some useful tips on Bach's sunniest piece, his G major French Suite. 2 movements from it, the opening Allemande and the jubilant Gigue, which rounds out this dance suite. So I'll start just by playing a little bit of each of those movements so you get a taste, and you may recognize them. They're quite famous. Here's the beginning of the Allemande. And the Gigue. Now, this suite features all of the core movements of the Baroque dance suite. It's a kind of pan-European tour of different dances that derive from different European countries and also some colonial countries abroad. So these suites typically begin with an Allemande and then proceed to a courante or a corrente, which is the Italian original dance that inspired the French courante. The sarabande, which is actually a colonial Spanish dance that originated in Central America but was popular in Spain in the Baroque era as well. And then the Gigue, which has more northern roots coming from Ireland, Scotland, England, and the British Isles. And those are the 4 dance suites. They're the 4 movements that you'll see in every Bach dance suite. Some of his suites have preludes or opening sort of grand movements, such as in the partitas, or there's a prelude for every English suite. But the French suites are actually a little more compact. They all just begin with the Allemande, but then you'll see 2 or 3 interpolated movements that usually come between the sarabande and Gigue. And this particular suite has some really interesting dances that originate from France, including a gavotte and a bourrée, which are quite typical for these suites, but also a lour, which is a French sort of, it's a bagpipe of sorts that developed into a dance of its own and is quite rare, but it's one of my favorite movements from this. But we'll just be focusing on the outer movements of the work because ultimately this is a lesson on Bach in general and the kinds of approaches technically, interpretively, stylistically that you'll be able to apply across not only this suite, but other Bach pieces as well. Now, I mentioned tempo. I just wanted to mention a few recordings here so you get a sense of the range of possibility. I'll go ahead and get Glenn Gould out of the way. I don't think he likes this piece. He plays it at roughly quarter equals 90, which I can barely do. I mean, I don't feel it this way at all. Actually, he does this trill. And I think he even throws in a trills there. Something like that, maybe even faster. This is not his particular kind of Bach that he favored. He didn't like the lyrical stuff so much as he enjoyed, complex fugues and canons and things like that. On the other end, I mentioned Gilels playing almost half tempo from Gould at quarter equals 48, something like this. Actually, his trill, I think, is... It's something like that, right? So somewhere in the middle, or most other musicians, pianists and harpsichordists alike. So I'd like to just share that with you so you know going in there isn't one correct tempo. In fact, there's a whole range of tempos, probably between the two Gs, between Gould and Gilels, for you to explore. I wrote some tempos down here. So, for example, let's see, Andras Schiff, Angela Hewitt are right around 70, so it's a little bit faster. Very flowing. More recently, Bruce Liu has a recording that's just comes in a little under that, around 66. Tatiana Nikolaeva, the great Russian Bach pianist, as quarter equals around 62. And then there's a wonderful, I think, Russian-German pianist, Yevgeny Korolyov, who plays quarter actually at 52, but it's not romantic like Gilels at all. So that's an interesting one to listen to maybe. And then a couple of harpsichordists here who are always more flexible than pianists, rhythmically. You'll hear this kind of note in égal, almost swung type of rhythm sometimes. I don't know if I do it very well, but it's this kind of lilting quality, which maybe we should try more on the piano, something for you to explore, but you'll hear that in harpsichordists like Mahan Esfahani, who comes in around quarter equals 64, Francesco Corti at quarter is 60, and Christophe Rousset is around 58. So they're sort of on the lower middle range, the slightly slower middle range of tempo. And I think that's partly because they do a lot more, especially on repeats. You'll hear some really interesting patterns and ornamentation designs. And also just because they have a different instrument, and timing is something very important for them. And gesture is important in a slightly different way than we think of at the piano. But these are important sources for you to refer to when you're just sort of developing your stylistic tastes. I like something in that 60 range. I'm probably somewhere around Bruce Liu. Maybe it's, that we're sort of younger generation here, finding just an average tempo. But I do think that it's a nice andante walking tempo. Remember, this could be a wedding entrance. The bride walks in and for me, that's very comfortable, and you can do a lot of beautiful things with it. Now, I mentioned I would walk through, so let's sort of take a look at this harmonic scheme. So I mentioned that the A section and the B section both have 12 bars, but they're organized a little bit differently phrase-wise. So in the A section of the Allemande, we hear Bach in bars 1 through 4 establish and reinforce G major, the tonic. So, He begins on the third scale degree in the melody, which Chopin would often do at the beginning of his nocturnes, for example. Right? Beginning on that third scale degree is an expressive, romantic thing to do, Okay, but here we are in G major, but you hear it. It's the note that makes it major, right? So listen to the first 4 bars, and you'll hear G major sort of move in a direction towards its dominant, and then eventually bring it back to cadence in G. And then, in the next 4 bars, 5 through 8, Bach moves towards the dominant, and I want you to listen for how he gets there. So first he explores a kind of E minor terrain, and it's going to take him in the direction of D major, the dominant. Pretty much squarely in D in the middle of bar 8 there. And then from 9 through 12, he sort of enjoys the new key he's found himself in and sort of celebrates it a bit. So this is the end of 8, 9. Pretty much squarely in D major with a little, what we might call modal mixture, almost Schubertian. Right, the parallel minor, which prepares this little circle of fifths chromatic thing and delivers us very elegantly back to D major. Moving on to the B section now. Another 12 bars, but the phrases are not 4+4. Okay. Now it gets to be the piano lesson. How do we actually play this music so it sounds light and articulate and clear, and this polyphony emerges with style and flavor and taste? Well, I want to recommend that you develop a spectrum of touches. You might hear from some people, oh, Bach should be played detached, or no, Bach can be legato, and I say yes, all of the above. And also often different varieties of articulation and touch and dynamics all at the same time. Let's exploit the resources of the piano, which, especially with a fine instrument like this, can respond to our different gradations of touch. And if you're able to integrate that into a performance, it's just going to fill it with color and wonder and interest and intrigue for the listener. So how do we do that? Well, I like to think of this spectrum maybe as going from all the way from a kind of pointillistic staccato to an overlappy legato. And you want to live in between in as many places as you can. So one way to do that is to start legato, I think, and then just start shaving off your release points. You might even try a legato where there's no overlap at all, but it's also not detached. So the moment I play a new key, I lift the one right before it. Okay, now I'm going to shave off a release point. Shave off a little more. Shave off a little more. And there's even, nuance inside of that, different gradations inside of that. So this work on touch you can do on a scale. You can do it with the material of the piece itself. Play it excessively legato just as an experiment. Which, by the way, might come in handy with this theme, as I'll show you in a bit. But you also might try it. Legato, but almost non-legato. It's right on that cusp, so that I could take it to a non-legato. again, I'm not recommending this as the way you should articulate it. I just want you to be able to do it. And I want you to be able to do it on the spot, even spontaneously if you so choose, so that when you're playing this music and maybe you're repeating a section, you are able to inject it with variety that you're comfortable with and wasn't entirely calculated and pre-planned. So this will help you develop your touch, and it'll also give you a toolbox for using these different touches. Notice that even when I was playing more pointillistically, I was always making a phrase. And this is really important. You want to be able to play with continuity with any touch. So if you get pecky, listen to Glenn Gould when he plays detached. It's never actually mechanical. His critics are wrong. It's not typewriter playing. There's always a line where it's like this point moves to the next point, which is just ever so slightly louder or moving in a new direction, and then that pattern continues and that line continues. Right? I still made shapes with that, even though it was little dots. Imagine you're actually, remember those old, when I was a kid, you had to, trace, your pencil around different dots to help make a picture, but you already saw the picture was sort of there just with the outlines and the dots. And then you ran your pencil through it like it's legato. Well, the point is there was already shape. You could already sort of make something out. And that's sometimes how we want certain passages of Bach to sound, maybe. So be able to do that. Now, this first ornament, I should